Many people have brought accusations against the Bible passage Deuteronomy chapter 22 verses 28 through 29, saying that it teaches that a rape victim must marry her rapist. But is this true? Is this what the Bible actually teaches? Let's find out. This passage is mainly confusing and complex and has a lot of controversy because people point out the New International Version of the translation of Deuteronomy chapter 22 verse 20 and 29. It reads as follows: If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and rapes her, and they are discovered, he shall pay her 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the young woman, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. So when you read the New International Version, as many atheist people do, and they pointed out, rightfully so, that it says that he rapes her, he violated her, and he must marry the rapist. If you go up on this translation alone, you will think that the Bible forces you to marry your rapist, which is incorrect. Now when you compare it to the translation in the King James Version, here's what it says: If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her, and lie with her, and they be found, then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all of his days. Notice in this translation that there's nothing here about raping, or forcing, or violating. It's more like a consensual thing. Laying hold on her, lying with her, and they be found. So the two of them together are in a consensual act, which is very different than rape as portrayed in the New International Version. As of course with everything, context is important, and parallel passages help understand the passage better. And for that, I found an article that talks about this, and that article is on Got Questions, a website that has a lot of good resources, but of course with everything you need to research it and make sure it's correct what you're reading. But this question is, does Deuteronomy 22:28-9 command a rape victim to marry her rapist? And down here, when we scroll down, it talks about the context of this entire passage. And it says it's helpful to review the context. And the entire context is chapter 22, verse 13 to 29. The passage is devoted to offenses involving women. Verses 13 through 22 deal with crimes involving married women, so women that are already married. The first one being a bride is accused of premarital promiscuity but is innocent. Result, the bride and her family receive damages. Okay, second is a bride is accused of premarital promiscuity and is guilty. Result, she is executed. And the third, a man is married, a man and a married woman commit adultery. Result, both are executed. And then we go down to the passage we're dealing with, 23 to 29, involves crimes involving an unmarried woman. So the first one, a man and a betrothed woman, one who's about ready to get married, she's betrothed, commit consensual fornication, resulting in both are executed. The second one is a man is found guilty of rape, and the result is he is executed. So here's an actual instance of rape, and we're going to look that one up, verse 25 to 27. Right before that, we'll read it. It says here, But if a man find a betrothed damsel in a field, and the man force her, and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die. And then it says, But unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin worthy of death. For as when a man riseth against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so in this matter. For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to help her. So here's the difference in the language. Number one, we see that he finds the betrothed damsel in the field, and he forces her. So force is different. There's talking of rape. Something actually happened against her will, and we also can see here that she cried out, and there was nobody to save her, which is very different from the language in these verses. There's no talk of forcing or crying out. It's consensual. So the result is that the man who is found guilty of rape is executed, which is very different. And then our passage, it says a man and a non-betrothed woman commit consensual fornication. Result and the damages are due to the girl and her family. Okay, and then it goes on to say here, the fact that verses 28 and 29 deal with consensual sex, not rape, is proved in 4 ways. There's a parallel passage. Exodus 22:16 and 17 shows that no force is involved, the seizing of the girl, and has more to do with seduction than coercion. So let's go look at that passage. Exodus 22, up here, and verses 17 and 16 says, "And if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. If her father utterly refuse to give her unto him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins." So a man entices or seduces a maid, and they lie together. So because of that, he's obligated to take care of her because she's not a virgin anymore. So he has to go to the father, and then we see in the other passage he has to pay the 50 shekels of silver. That's the money according to a dowry. But here's another interesting thing. The father, if he utterly refuses to give her, so if he refuses to give his daughter to her, then he has to pay this dowry. But if he doesn't, then he has to marry her and take care of her. So, and this passage indicates something very different than rape. It's more like people messing around that aren't married and being held accountable for it. And that's exactly what's happening in this passage. Let's see what it says here. It says, the verses preceding, I've already dealt with rape, as I pointed out before. The penalty is that the rapist is executed. A rapist isn't being forced to marry one that he raped, but he's executed. That's a major difference in the passage. And then he points out something interesting here in verse 28. It says it contains the important statement that cannot be overlooked. They are discovered. In other words, it's not just a man who's found out, it's both of them. It's a case in which both the man and the woman somehow share a portion of the blame. Therefore, there's no force involved. It's not rape. But their action has been discovered. The man cannot walk away from his sin. He has put the young woman in a difficult life situation, in which there would be few or no other men who would want to marry her. So God holds both parties accountable, instructing them to get married and stay together. Or, if the father refuses, then he has to pay a huge sum, which is 50 shekels of silver. And then it says here there's 2 distinct Hebrew words used in the same passage. The word translated rape in 22:25 is a Hebrew word, shazak, but verse 28 contains a different word, translated seizes, or tapas. The different verbs suggest different actions. So we can see here very clearly that there's a difference between rape and something that is more or less consensual or seduction or things like that. So it says that the Old Testament never commands a rape victim to marry a rapist. The rapist is actually put to death. So here's a neat thing it says here at the bottom. It says, Dr. Richter sums it up. In Deuteronomy, victims of sexual misconduct were constitutionally protected from the economic consequences of assault and seduction. Walkaway Joes were required to man up. The young woman was shielded from economic and social fallout of the encounter. Rape victims were assumed innocent. Women so abused were expected to report. Convicted rapists were executed. So you can see for yourself, and I would encourage you to study it for yourself, to look at this passage where it's talking about. You can see very clearly that it's not talking about rape. It's talking about consensual relationships together. I hope that makes sense. So next time you hear somebody talking about a situation in which the Bible says it teaches that you must marry your rapist, you can realize that it's not true. This is not what the Bible is talking about. You can have them look at these passages and read it for themselves. I hope that helps.